All right, here's what we're following in news today. Montreal-based Bombardier. We're going to get this first look now at their $510 million facility. It is a state-of-the-art facility in Ontario. Have a look.
Bombardier has emerged from this pandemic stronger, more focused, but also a much more resilient company. This year, we have become a pure-play business aviation company, and the market conditions are definitely very favorable for us.
Okay, so here it is, a 770,000 square foot factory at Toronto's Pearson Airport. It will be manufacturing jets. Its new facility, also environmentally sustainable. It is expected to reduce energy consumption by almost 60% and lower greenhouse gas emissions.
For most of NATO's history, one rule has been constant. The United States decides what the alliance flies, what it sees, and what it can buy. Washington's aircraft, Washington's radar systems, Washington's export approvals, the entire architecture of NATO airpower has been shaped by American hands. But something unexpected is happening. In two Canadian cities, far from the speeches, summits, and political theater, a shift is taking place that challenges the decades-old reality. On factory floors in Toronto and Montreal, Canadian workers are building aircraft that don't just fill capability gaps. They rewrite the balance of influence inside the alliance. For the first time, NATO's future may not run exclusively through Washington. It may run through Canada, and almost no one is talking about it. Canada's rise inside NATO isn't arriving through dramatic announcements or sweeping policy declarations. It's emerging through industrial capability, the kind that quietly accumulates power over time. The kind that reshapes alliances not through rhetoric, but through production lines, supply chains, and sovereign control over advanced technology. And the center of this transformation is a single aircraft that most people outside the defense world have barely heard of. Inside a Bombardier facility in Toronto, thousands of skilled workers are assembling a platform. It is one that NATO countries are now seriously considering as the backbone of their future air defense networks. It's called GlobalEye, and its existence changes who controls the skies, and who controls the decisions behind them. This aircraft is not a prototype. It is not a concept seeking investors. It is a fully operational airborne early warning and control system already flying with customers, already demonstrating real-world capability, and already proving that NATO has a viable alternative to American surveillance platforms. To understand why this matters, you have to understand the history. For more than 70 years, the United States dominated this segment of military aviation. The Boeing E-3 AWACS, based on the 707 airliner, became the alliance's flying radar command post. It was iconic, the spinning radar dome, the long fuselage, the unmistakable silhouette. But it was also a monopoly. If a NATO country wanted airborne early warning, the purchase flowed through Washington. There were no comparable European alternatives that matched range, integration, and operational history. Surveillance aircraft remained one of the last uncontested monopolies in Western defense. And monopolies in defense don't just shape capability, they shape politics. GlobalEye breaks that monopoly in a way that cannot be ignored. The platform is built on the Bombardier Global Express business jet, a long-range Canadian airframe that has been flying executives and government leaders for decades. The mission systems come from Saab of Sweden. The radar technology is European. Swiss and other European components are integrated throughout. The aircraft does not rely on American parts, and that detail carries enormous weight in today's political climate. In an era where export controls, political pressure, and shifting alliances shape procurement decisions, the ability to buy NATO-relevant surveillance aircraft without US approval is a strategic breakthrough. GlobalEye's radar offers a detection range of roughly 350 nautical miles, allowing it to monitor vast stretches of airspace while simultaneously tracking air, surface, and ground targets. It can coordinate air defense networks, feed targeting data to fighters, and manage complex air operations. In practical terms, it multiplies the effectiveness of every fighter in the air. Pilots can only engage what they detect. GlobalEye extends that detection horizon far beyond what onboard fighter radars can provide. But the technical capability is only half the story. The political capability is the other half. Because GlobalEye contains no American components, it is not subject to US export controls. That means Washington cannot block a sale, delay a delivery, or use the aircraft as leverage in broader negotiations. For NATO countries increasingly wary of political dependency, that matters. And for Canada, it represents something even more significant. That is, leverage. Toronto's role in this program builds on an industrial base that has existed for years. Bombardier has long produced the Global Express in the city, supported by established production lines, certification processes, supply networks, and experienced personnel. The transition to the surveillance variant does not require constructing an entirely new ecosystem. Instead, Saab's mission systems are integrated onto a proven Canadian airframe. Radar systems are installed, electronics configured, software tested, and the finished aircraft rolls out as a complete airborne surveillance platform. Roughly 2,000 workers in Toronto are tied directly to defense production, and when ripple effects are included, GlobalEye supports between 6,000 and 8,000 jobs across Ontario's broader economy. These are not low-skill positions. They are engineers, software developers, machinists, systems integrators, and avionics specialists. They represent a high-value industrial base that Canada has struggled to maintain in other sectors. Every GlobalEye that leaves the production line strengthens that base. And this is only half the story. In Montreal, another transformation is underway. Canada is now producing fighter aircraft through Saab's Gripen partnership. This is not simple assembly. It is technology transfer, systems integration, and sovereign capability building. Sweden's model is clear: if you buy Gripen, you build Gripen. That means Canadian engineers, Canadian avionics specialists, Canadian software teams, and Canadian long-term maintenance capability. Montreal becomes a fighter aircraft manufacturing hub, something only a handful of NATO countries possess. This matters because NATO's fighter ecosystem is dominated by the United States. The F-35 program is the largest defense project in history, and Washington's influence over it is immense. Countries that buy the F-35 depend on US software updates, US maintenance hubs, US spare parts pipelines, and US political approval for upgrades. Gripen offers something different. That's sovereignty. And when Gripen production is paired with GlobalEye production, Canada becomes one of the only NATO countries capable of supplying both fighters and airborne surveillance systems, the two pillars of modern airpower. Together, Toronto and Montreal form a dual-platform aerospace ecosystem that positions Canada as a central node in NATO's evolving defense network. Our NATO country seeking both fighters and airborne early warning capability can acquire both without depending on American export approvals or American components. That combination is rare. It gives Canada something it has never had before, which is influence. NATO's aging E-3 AWACS fleet is approaching the end of its life. Maintenance costs are rising, parts are difficult to source, and capabilities are outdated. Replacement decisions must be made within the next 5 to 10 years. The choice narrows to acquiring the American E-7 Wedgetail or moving toward the Canadian-European GlobalEye. Recent political friction between Washington and certain allies has intensified interest in independent options. Sovereignty in defense procurement is no longer an abstract principle. It is a practical calculation. GlobalEye presents advantages for many missions. It is smaller than the E-3, consumes less fuel, and can operate from more austere airfields. Operating costs are lower, and crew requirements are reduced. Its mission systems are modern from inception rather than retrofitted onto a legacy airframe. Over decades of service, those differences translate into billions of dollars in savings. And because GlobalEye contains no American components, nations purchasing it avoid the risk of political leverage affecting support or upgrades. This is where Canada's leverage becomes real. The more Canada builds, the less Washington can pressure it. GlobalEye gives Canada exportable capability, industrial influence, and sovereign production. Gripen production gives Canada fighter aircraft manufacturing and long-term maintenance capability. Together, they give Canada something it has never held inside NATO. This is a counterweight to US dominance. Not confrontational, not hostile, but structural. Meanwhile, Canada's own fighter procurement remains fluid. Ottawa has approved new payments tied to 14 additional F-35s, but these payments are for long-lead components. It's simply a mechanism designed to keep Canada in the production queue while internal reviews continue. The government is preserving flexibility. Behind closed doors, the debate over a mixed fleet that includes Gripen remains active. Washington has applied pressure, warning that NORAD arrangements could be affected if Canada reduces its F-35 purchase. But Canada is no longer negotiating from a position of dependence. It is negotiating as a country that builds fighters and surveillance aircraft for NATO. This is the quiet shift unfolding in Canada's aerospace sector. It has not occurred through dramatic speeches or confrontational rhetoric. It has unfolded through manufacturing contracts, supply chain coordination, and technical integration. As more aircraft leave the production line and enter Allied service, reliance on a single supplier for airborne surveillance diminishes. In practical terms, NATO is receiving advanced surveillance capability from Toronto, regardless of whether Washington endorses every transaction. Each radar installed and each airframe completed reduces the leverage that once accompanied monopoly control. The shift will continue aircraft by aircraft, contract by contract, year by year. And as more nations discover that alternatives exist, the balance of influence within the alliance evolves. Canada is no longer just a NATO member, it is becoming a NATO supplier. A producer of fighters, a producer of surveillance aircraft. A sovereign aerospace power shaping the alliance's future. The decisions made in Toronto, Montreal, and Ottawa over the next few years won't just influence Canada's place in NATO. They will influence NATO's next chapter. And that chapter is already being written. This is Trad Economics. See you in the next.